Action!
I really credit Jon. He's fabulous. I love the guy. I love being around him. He's wonderful. I knew him somewhat and already really liked him and kind of came away loving him and loving every minute. And he's so talented and so smart and so invests himself. It was a joy to work with him every day. And I remember shooting that, and I remember we fell into a very natural rhythm that we seem able to just fall into. Honestly, the guy's just great. I'm able to respond and connect to him. I also think that because I find him so appealing and engaging and interesting and warm and cool and smart and funny, you see that. That's genuine, we get along. And I think that's what I mean, you can't fake it. Chemistry is a hard thing to conjure up, whether it's romantic relationships or any kind of relationship like family or best friends. Those are all the kinds of relationships that, they get forged over time. You're just used to being in that person's company. You kind of almost develop a sort of rhythm or an energy around them. And to fall into that and make it believable is very hard because it's like I said, it's a hard thing to fake. And I think I just credit the fact that I just find him so spectacular. It put me at ease. I don't think I would have been able to do it in the same way with another actor.
Ben and Jon really like each other. They sort of become really, really friendly in a very personal way. So, which I was pushing toward, I was encouraging that, of course. I thought it was great because they had a rhythm and a flow and a timing and just this molecular chemical thing that that just was magic. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I hoped for it. Now, we met many times before during prep and rolled up sleeves on the script, and it was a complicated script, so it's sort of bite by bite handling that, but you don't know till you start rolling your camera. And when I saw the magic that was happening with these guys, okay, this is going to be, I'm going to keep running at this. And that was, so it even changed. There's a lot of times where I'll just sit in a two-shot with these guys because I just think it's more interesting to watch them together because they just had this rhythm.
It's great to be with Ben. I mean, it's just great. Yeah, I think we were able to bond on this one. Last time we didn't spend that much time with each other, but we really did on this, and we really got close. And he and I just had sort of an ease and a rapport right from the jump, both on screen and off. And I'm really grateful for it. I admire him so much. The thing about Ben is he's not only this sort of icon and this brilliant actor. He's an enormously intelligent, vulnerable, sensitive, kind person. And look, he's the guy here. He's the big boss too, and he's a brilliant filmmaker, to boot. And I've been blown away with his ability to sort of temper himself and let everybody kind of do their thing, and him just sort of settle into the role of being the lead actor, not the studio head, And it's been really, but also at times to sort of step in and say, hey, this is what sort of needs to be done here. I think he's done it with elegance, and I think he's done it with grace. I have enormous respect for him.
I was really encouraging them to take ownership of their characters, and they did. So once they really understood these characters and how to relate to each other and what we were going for and trying to attack every scene, we would shoot it where we did the lines, and then I would start encouraging them to improvise. And they're both really good at improvisation. So there's a lot in the movie that was unscripted. There's a lot in the movie that they improvised. I mean, the scene with Ben and the dating scene, mostly all of his answers are improvised. Seriously, now he did the scripted answers, but I kept the improv. I was kept just improv it. Just you know Chris, just answer as Chris. And so there was a lot of that in the film.
He's somebody who I think before we come back to him has really been trying to address the things that he wants in his life. I think he feels a little bit lonely. I think he wants to have a kind of human connection, maybe romantic relationship. And also, despite the fact that his brother sort of holds against him, that he hasn't reached out to him, I think he's been kind of keeping tabs on his brother. And he's just more comfortable sort of putting his brother in that relationship in a place where he sort of knows it's there. But their different ways of approaching relationship have left his brother feeling like, hurt and neglected and kind of ignored. And it isn't because Christian doesn't love him and care about him. He does very much. In fact, I think he really uses this opportunity of this events of this movie to reconnect with his brother because he wants to. He just doesn't have a reason. The central core of this movie is about them reconnecting and forging like a relationship that actually is going to sustain now until the next movie.
The whole neurodivergent aspect of the character and of the story of the first movie was a big part of what drew me to it, and the great lines like don't think of them as less than, think of them as other, And I know that Gavin and Bill, when they were researching all of this, and were concerned about, is this going to be remotely believable, I mean, they met a kid who was like a champion wrestler, like legitimate, high school wrestler, like a very powerful, and that was where he was able to use his focus and his skills. Most of us by this time, in my case through kids, we know people who are on the spectrum and neurodivergent in different ways, and helping to create a space for them in the world. And again, it becomes, it's such a great escalation of that in the sequel as we once again revisit the Academy and see how that ties into the story. Is brilliant.
Exploring brotherhood is something that is in all of Gavin's films. These guys grew up in an incredibly complicated way, and this film, although is sort of a Trojan horse for all kinds of sort of traumatic kids being raised in traumatic situations. It's a Trojan horse for, like we talked before, folks that are growing up on the spectrum and what that does and how that is, for the entire family. And it's sort of again delivered in this Trojan horse of being an action film. There was no shortcuts taken in this second film. It was not, hey, we can do sort of an easier version, just get it out there. It was really, it was a deeper dive into the relationship. It was a deeper dive into the wound that took place in this family, and that's something I'm all on board for. And I've always thought with Brax, especially, he's as equally complicated a person as his brother is. And I was enormously grateful and happy that they decided to dive into his character this way. And it's been a lot of fun.
Everything that was happening in Juarez was really about the culmination of these two brothers now working together. And that was really what I just kept emphasizing to Ben and Jon, was that inside of what their mission was, it was really about how do these two brothers work together, which you can hit the rewind button to the first movie, to the flashbacks of the first movie, when they were little boys and they had, Brax had Chris's back, and when they had to solve a problem, they would try to do it together. That's really, I was just sort of dramatizing what happened to them as when they were children, and now that they're adults, how do these guys, when we start them off sort of on opposite corners, and I'm just slowly trying to bring them together, it culminates in, it's a very simple thing with Chris says to Brax in the back of the Airstream when they're gearing up to go to war, and Chris just says, I'm sorry. And that's all Brax needed.
Action!
I think with the character of Christian Wolff and the way Ben portrays him, you have somebody that they have this real physical presence, very tall, almost arguably imposing in certain situations. And yet there's also this vulnerability, it's like the person that you want to sort of reach out and give a hug to. And so you've got these two sort of opposing ideas embodied in this one character. And I think, of course, you're rooting for Christian Wolff, especially once you really know the depths of his origin story and how he sort of arrived at the point that he arrived at. And I think Ben does this amazing job, and I think it's why people really responded to him in this role, that he sort of plays both of those things. A guy that should be feared in any kind of altercation, but also clearly longs and yearns for being able to just express certain things, for connection, for things that, we all can relate to in that sense.
He's a guy that I had thought about a lot, and because of the first movie, I developed some relationships with people that gave me a deeper, broader, more rich understanding, I think, of the character. By the time I got to the filming this movie, I was the lucky beneficiary of some relationships in my own life that really helped, some people that I really love, in some ways had some similarities to this character, and so I'm just really lucky again in that regard. And so I was actually not only able to, but I was excited to bring some of that to this part, and I just felt like, boy, you're lucky as an actor when you've got the closer and the sharper the sort of model or the inspiration for a character is, the more easily you can draw on it, the more easily you can kind of answer questions for yourself. And so I actually was much more excited and felt like I sort of understood this guy better.
I feel like everyone is going to be really like, what just happened? There are some turns and some plot twists and some things that, frankly, when I was reading the script, I didn't see coming. And when I put 2 and 2 together about my character, I was like, how are they going to do that? And now I'm in it, and I'm like, oh, I think we're going to pull it off. So I feel like aside from being entertaining and being fun and having killer action, it's a really, really good plot twisty movie.
This time around, I get to have a little fun, a little play fighting, a little pretend fighting stuff, mayhem. Ray is kind of in a box and has to try and fight his way out. So it's not just Ben and Jon and the stunt guys that get to have fun this time. I'm involved as well.
The way these guys work, I mean, the way Gavin works and the way Bill works, and like I said, I know them both. You know, they are not people who, there's nothing sloppy about them. There's nothing, they do not take the easy way out. Bill has an encyclopedic knowledge of these characters. These people are all coming from his life, from his world, and his heart, and his head. I've gotten to know Bill pretty well over the years, and Gavin works the exact same way. He's methodical. He doesn't leave any stone unturned. There's nothing that just sort of is thrown away. We went over this script, I mean, so many times to try to find any sort of inconsistencies, any sort of things that just brought up questions, any sort of mysteries, and then we dove in with everything we could to solve those mysteries. And so many of, I often think, so many times when you locate the problems in a script, or you locate the problem, the thing that you just can't quite buy, or the thing you can't just quite wrap your head or your heart around when you're playing a role, if you just focus on that one thing, once you figure that out, it opens up so many rivers of opportunity for the rest of the project, and that's really what we did.
All of Gavin's work I've been a fan of, and when they first approached me about doing The Accountant, I watched Warrior, and thought, even at the times when as an audience I feel like I might know what's coming, he still had us as an audience so invested and involved in these two brothers. Again, the theme of brotherhood. There's just a heart. There's a great combination, actually, of sort of heart and just a masculinity that is often sort of a defense mechanism, which is a reality in old school men, and something that I relate to and really appreciate.
I think at the end of the day, people want to see themselves in stories, in movies, but they also want to see their loved ones, they want to see their siblings, they want to see their parents, their children, their peers. And I love that in telling this story centered around a neurodivergent character, sort of subverting whatever expectation there might be around what that person's like, what that person sort of strives for, hopes for, fears. And I think that's my favorite part about, this particular world, and why I think people respond to it so much.
Well, I think that what you get from the movie is just a lot of food groups, because, this is not just an action movie. I would have zero interest, and I'd be bored to tears making an action movie. But if we give some action and drama and humor and fun and love and brothers and human connection and the search for that, I think it checks a lot of boxes of what and you feel things, which I'm always trying to do when I tell stories, is to make people feel things. And I think you get that. And I think when you share an experience with an audience, I think the reason the action works is because you're invested in these. You're invested in Chris and Brax doing it together. Chris was going to go alone. Brax decides to go. Chris apologizes, and now I think for the audience, my goal was to get the audience now invested. Okay, these guys are in it together. And by the way, tracking the story, you know, when Chris sees that little boy Alberto in that photograph, this lonely boy who he sees, it's a mirror reflecting back on himself. When he sees that, that's the fuel for Chris. So his soul now has been fueled to go try to find this child. And now you have Brax going there with him, these two brothers. And we watch them now basically take on an army of guys. I mean, figuratively, not literally, but taking on all these guys because they have a quest and a goal to save these children. And you know, poor everybody that gets in the way of that.
Look, I hope people dig it. I really hope people dig this movie. I think that there is a ton of heart behind this movie. I think there's a ton of heart. I think it came from love. Again, there's no shortcuts on this film. I think that it's a sequel, but it's also a standalone film. There's so much love, again, for these characters and for this family at the core of the film. Every part of the process, every part of the journey along the way was kind of made from that. So yeah, there will be unbelievable action. There will be heart-wrenching scenes and heart-wrenching stakes. We will get behind the mission of the film, the sort of puzzle-like quality of the first film, trying to figure it out. I think it's there to a certain extent, but this one is so much more down and dirty. It's so much more about the emotions and the connections and what these characters want. But I think you'll see that. I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think you're going to see that this story is so much more about it. There's just so much more heart in this version, and I think people are going to dig it.
I think audiences are going to have another one of those edge of the seat kind of experiences with this movie, which is both due to the physical action and the brilliant, like really real fight sequences, but more importantly, the emotional edge of the seat as we ride this relationship, primarily the relationship between Christian and Braxton.
Action!
Boom, nice.
Action!